The House Judiciary Committee will come to order. Before we get started, I would like us all to have a moment of silence, a prayer, if you will, to yourself for the horrible tragedy that has occurred at Michigan State University. This has struck the core of Lansing and all of Michigan. I know many of us here either attended Michigan State. We have staff here that lives or goes to Michigan State. Vice Chair Edwards has provided counseling services to the students and staff over there, and I would like to thank her personally for that. So I'll take one moment here to reflect upon the tragedy and the lives that have been lost and forever shattered. Thank you. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Chair Breen.
Present.
Representatives Edwards.
Present.
Carter.
Present.
Hope. Here. Arbet. Devendorf. Hoskins.
Here.
Cerniglu.
Here.
Fink.
Here.
Wenzel. Wozniak.
Here.
Outman.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have 11 members present. You do have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I need a motion. Vice Chair Edwards makes a motion to approve and adopt the minutes from the previous meetings. So moved. I also need a motion to excuse any absent members. Motion from Vice Chair Fink. Thank you. We are now going to lay bills 4045 and 4069 before the committee. We have Representatives Schmaltz and Hope to give testimony. Right there.
The matching royal blue.
You both look fantastic.
Everybody, doesn't it?
Representative Hope, would you care to start?
Sure. So if you looked at the language of these two bills, you would see that they are identical or virtually identical. And that was due to some unfortunate timing, but the important part is that we both support what this bill would do, or what these bills would do, to create a background check system for people who work with vulnerable populations. And there are some legal requirements for this statute and then some technical things that I can talk about too, but I'd like to turn it over to Rep. Schmaltz to let her speak.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and the committee for letting me speak on this bill. I support this bill because it ensures that our state police can continue doing the job that they're doing, which is keeping not only you and I safe, but also our children, elderly, and other vulnerable or disabled loved ones. I've been working on this bill since I've got into office, and I had many conversations over the past couple of months on how important it is that this legislation is adopted. In light of the tragic events at MSU, I believe that this bill is of even more vital importance to ensure the safety of our loved ones. Many Michigan employers, as well as agencies that rely heavily on volunteers, require criminal background checks before they hire an employee or accept a new volunteer. This is particularly true for employees and volunteers who will have supervised or unsupervised access to a child, an elderly individual, or an individual with a disability who has provided care or placement services. Without this new legislation, qualified non-criminal justice agencies could request background checks directly from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but these agencies would lose access to the RAP-BAC program and others, and would likely see less timely responses to their applicant requests. This would lead to a negative impact on vulnerable populations and lead to unnecessary victimization. The statute will only allow the Michigan State Police to continue doing what they are already doing currently. It does not provide additional authority. And the reason I am here is because this is good policy. It gives the state police the tools they need to protect the people of the state of Michigan. I was the first to introduce this bill. I don't care whose name's on the bill or who gets credit. It's good policy, and that's why I'm here. And I appreciate the ability for you of letting me speak.
Thank you, representatives. I know that we have somebody from Michigan State Police to testify, but does anybody on the committee have a question for the representatives? Representative Edwards?
Thank you. Good morning. You indicated that this bill would allow them to continue doing what they're already doing. Then why is the bill necessary?
Because, oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right. The need for this bill arose from an amendment to a federal statute. So, as Rep. Schmaltz correctly emphasized, the state police are already doing these things, and you said that in your question as well. The change here is that they will no longer be able to do these things unless they have state authorizing statute.
Any other questions from the committee for the bill sponsors? Thank you, colleagues. Anything else?
I just wanted to explain the wrap back a little bit in case anyone was wondering about that. That refers to the ability of the state police through the FBI to continually run background checks. So if you hire someone in your daycare or you add a volunteer to your senior center, they will be continually background checked. So if anything arises, as things do, that will be flagged for the entity.
Thank you, Representative Pope. Representative Schmaltz?
Yes, it allows for the anything that comes up in fingerprinting for the Michigan State Police to be able to be alerted to that also. That's really important. And this all is coming down to a change in federal law, which is why we have to put this on the books to make sure that the Michigan State Police can continue to do this.
Thank you, ladies, for bringing this forward. And I note that Representative Schmaltz and James Johnson have submitted a card in support of their bill. And if nothing else, I'd like to call up now Sergeant Travis Fletcher from Michigan State Police. Thank you, Sergeant. I know that you've submitted cards in support of 4069 and 4045. Can you please give us your testimony?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Chair Breen and members of the Judiciary Committee for taking up this legislation and allowing us to come in and testify to this. Really quickly, my name is Sergeant Travis Fletcher. I'm the legislative liaison for the Michigan State Police, and with me is Miss Sherry Rosen. She is one of our department managers in our Criminal Justice Information Center housed within MSP. I also want to quickly thank Representative Hope. Last session, when this legislation was initially introduced, unfortunately, due to timing, we were unable to get it passed through the finish line. So we brought this to Representative Hope, to do, and she has been willing to do so. Also, want to appreciate Representative Schmaltz and the co-sponsors on her bill for taking up this issue. As we know, it is time sensitive, and it's something that is very important for individuals in our state. So thank you to that. The Volunteer Employee Criminal History Check Program is a program that is, this legislation is a priority for the Michigan State Police, but it's a program that allows the Michigan State Police to conduct and coordinate state and national background criminal history checks for individuals who are employed or seeking employment or volunteer opportunities for positions that would allow them to have either supervised or unsupervised access of children. So to expand on that a little bit, that could be anything from our school teachers in our public-private schools. This could be organizations, for-profit or non-for-profit, like the YMCA or other organizations like that. This could also include our caregivers that work in capacities at care homes all throughout the state of Michigan. We want to make sure that from our children's all the way up to our elders and individuals with disabilities are cared for in the best possible way. The authority that was the Michigan State Police CJIC, Criminal Justice Information Center, uses today to provide and coordinate these checks, state and national, is given through the National Child Protection Act and the Volunteer for Children Act of 1993. So today, the checks that we coordinate for this purpose is done because of that authority that we have. Back in 2017, there was an amendment that was the Child Protection Improvement Act, and that essentially required each state in the nation to create stateside legislation that would give us that authority because they were pulling that back. They said, we've given you the authority to do so, but now you need to create legislation to do the same in your state. So although this is new to Michigan, this is not new to other states throughout the nation. This is something that each state has had to enact to make sure that each state can continue providing these services and protections for our children, elders, and other vulnerable populations. One of the reasons why it's so time sensitive is we are up for an audit by the federal government. And our concern is that if they come in and see that our state has not enacted legislation that would provide us that authority, that they could essentially say, hey, you're not compliant with the Child Protection Improvement Act of 2017, and we could potentially lose some of those that authority to conduct these checks. And then we'd also lose the ability, like the representatives mentioned, including the Rat Pack program and other services. In a situation where this happened, only certain entities, like governmental entities, like public schools, would be able to reach out and work through some of these background checks themselves. We would not be able to provide that service, but then we'd have an issue with it not going through the same time restraints that we are able to do so in, and not being able to provide this service through the infrastructure that we're already working in right now. Other non-governmental agencies, again, like the YMCA and other profit or nonprofit agencies, they would not have that capability of utilizing this service, and we would not be able to provide that to them. Going through the legislation, it is very technical, but I do want to just summarize a few things very quickly. The legislation touches on definitions of the terminology throughout the act. It establishes MSPs and the Criminal Justice Information Center's authority to continue doing what we're already doing, and then also has built-in protections not only for the entities but also the individual. It requires that a qualified entity that is working with the Michigan State Police to conduct these services provide notices and disclosures to an individual so they know exactly what the fingerprints are being used for, what the purpose of their submission, and it provides a limitation on what that can be used for. So it's, again, not providing us just carte blanche authority to do whatever we want with this. It is very tailored to this specific role. It also establishes, it touches on the liability for entities that are non-governmental entities. They're not required to utilize this program. Most agencies throughout the state or organizations use this service so that they can vet volunteers and employees that are in those caregiver roles, but they're not required to. So that for that specific reason, there are built-in exclusions or carve-out for liability so that an organization can't be held liable for something that they're not legally required to do. Also, the department, this statute would allow the department to collect a fee that is not any higher than the actual cost for us to carry out this service. In conclusion, what this bill is doing is allowing us to continue doing what the state police already does for residents of the state of Michigan and governmental and non-governmental agencies. What this bill does not do is allow us to do anything in addition or extra of what we're already doing as of today. So I want to be clear that, again, this is not creating a new program in sense that's going to cost the state anything extra, that is going to subject anybody or any agency or organization to anything new. This just allows us to continue doing what we're doing as of today to make sure that we can provide the same protections that we are now in the future to children, elders, and other individuals of vulnerable populations. So with that, again, thank you, Chair Brain and members, for your consideration and your anticipated support for this legislation. Of course, we're always happy to answer any questions now and moving forward. If there are concerns that come up, we want to make sure that we can, get this done in a timely fashion, but also, making sure that we're, listening to everyone's concerns and considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Fletcher. I understand there's a ticking clock, and we do have some details to work out, so we will not be voting this out this week.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us the date that this must be enacted by, and what options are available for these qualified entities in the event that we somehow miss this date?
Absolutely. So I believe we are set to be audited by the federal government in June of this year. So we do need to have legislation stateside that provides us this authority to continue with this program prior to June. In a situation, in a world where we don't have this authority, I don't know if you want to, there would be, because we would be losing the authority from the federal government, we would have to then revert back to the authority, very limited authorities for very limited groups or organizations within the state. So for an example, our public schools right now, employees that work at public schools, they need to, during the course of gaining employment, they need to have a background check to make sure that they are fit to provide care, care to our students. In a situation where this was not provided and we were not able to continue this authority, schools would have to, we would have to work directly with schools to continue this service because they are a governmental agency. However, this would still disrupt the service because a lot of schools throughout the state of Michigan use a management system or company currently to conduct these background checks for their employees. Because that management system or that management organization is not a governmental agency and there is no other state authority that provides them the authority to do this or us to do that service for them, that would mean they were no longer able to do that. So the schools would be disrupted quite significantly because then that burden would be put on them to conduct themselves as opposed to using the systems that are already in place now. For other entities or organizations that are non-governmental, I don't think we would be able to provide, we wouldn't have the authority to conduct or coordinate those services. So I don't know if those services would be able to be done because there's no authority to allow that.
Before I hand it over to Representative Fink, just as an example, my sister has Down syndrome.
Yep.
The organization that she works with, if they cannot do the background checks through MSP, are there other options available for them that you're aware of?
The other options available would be just running a public criminal history check through iChat. There are alternate sources where they could reach out directly to the FBI, but we would not be able to provide fingerprint-based background checks to those entities. Again, they would not be able to be enrolled in RATBAC and get any subsequent arrest, charge, or conviction information if that individual were to commit a crime.
Thank you. Representative Fink?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your testimony this morning. I just found out right before coming into committee that there's been a case charged in my district where a camp counselor has been charged with some kind of sexual crime against a camper. I think it's actually at a YMCA camp, so very timely information that we're discussing this morning for the people of my district who are experiencing that horrible news this morning. My question would be sort of at the on-the-ground level like that, is this a service that if a person were to contact their local sheriff's department or their local police department, that they can then link into Lean or whatever it is? It's got to be direct to MSP? Do you understand the question?
I believe so. And no, that would not be able to be done through a local agency because of CJIC rules and how Criminal Justice Information Center operates in the state of Michigan. It is operated through MSP. So that's not something they wouldn't be able to, and them going to a local agency and getting like a criminal history record through lien, that would be in direct violation of CJIC policy, and so they would not be permitted to do that.
So if a covered entity or a qualified entity, whatever the language here is, wants to run one of these tests, they need to contact MSP directly, not their local PD.
Correct. And so they would have to first become a qualified entity. And so this legislation creates the framework for us establishing that relationship with them. We don't want to, through state and federal law, we have very specific restrictions on information that is in the database in the Criminal Justice Information Center. And so for us to remain compliant, we have to make sure that anyone that is partnered with us, as a qualified entity would be, is following certain restrictions as well. And that's one thing I actually didn't touch on in this. This legislation allows us the ability to audit so that we can make sure that those entities that we are in that relationship with are also abiding by CJIC policy so that, you know, people's rights are not being offended.
Yeah.
But I forgot the question. I'm sorry.
Well, we're just to kind of finally play out this, how a local entity, a child care place, whatever.
Yep.
So they got to go directly to MSP, and I guess the final piece of the question would then be, are the local, is the Jonesville MSP post the right place to call, to begin this process, or do they need to be calling somebody in Lansing?
They would be calling our CJIC
All right, so
department
it's
in
centralized.
Lansing.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Fink. Representative Arbit.
Thank you, Sergeant. I do have a question, building off Chair Breen's question. If the legislation should not be enacted by the time specified, that, and MSB is found to be out of compliance with federal law, what would happen to investigations that are in progress but not complete?
I'm not aware that this would impact investigations necessarily.
Or those checks? Right?
Yep. So those checks, anything after that date, if we were not able to continue them, anything that's already been done, the organizations, the qualified entities that are currently on our qualified list, they would already have the information. But moving forward, they would no longer receive the services through RAPBAC. So if one of their employees, if an employee of a qualified entity from there on commits a crime that would then flag the entity, they would no longer receive that. And then any new employees or any new volunteers seek employment we would not have the authority to provide background checks or coordinate background checks, state and national, for them. But anyone existing, they would already have that information to put them in that role where they're at.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions from the committee. Thank you, Sergeant Fletcher. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
And I encourage you to keep working with the bill sponsors to finalize any details so that we can hopefully get this done in the very, very, very near future. Seeing no other business before the committee, we are adjourned.